Welcome to Hotter Than Ever, where we uncover the unconscious rules we've been following, we break those rules, and we find a new path to being freer, happier, sexier, and more satisfied in the second half of our lives. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. As the end of the year approaches, I am in a reflective mood, and I have been thinking a lot about what this year has meant to me, what I have focused on and what I have not, what parts of myself I have worked on the most, what kind of inquiries I have been in. And this year, I have really taken on my relationship with my body. I've taken on my relationship with beauty and attractiveness, and related to that, I've obviously been doing a lot of focusing on men. For better or for worse, it is the big theme in my life. Love, lovability, and men, and what the role of body and body image and attraction plays in those dynamics. This year, I have exercised more consistently than any year in the past that I can remember. I started weight loss drugs in March, and I have lost 30 pounds so far, which feels amazing and has done wonders for my health, my confidence, and how I walk through the world. I've done some laser treatments on my face, on my skin, which has been rejuvenating. I've done some Botox and injectables. That's not new, but I'm very happy with how it's looking. Overall, I have prioritized an area of my life that has been fraught for me since childhood: beauty, weight, body. And I've taken it on finally from a point of view of self-love rather than discipline and self-criticism and punishment. And I will say it took until my 50s to be able to change this conversation and the way my brain works around it. So it is a big deal for me. And I suspect it is a big deal for some or many, or maybe even all of the women who are listening to this podcast today. There's not a woman I know who doesn't do battle in some form with these conversations about beauty and weight and self-love and body image and aging on a regular basis. So that's why this conversation with Deb Schachter today is so meaningful to me. And I hope that it will be meaningful to you too. Deb is a leading clinician in the areas of body image and eating disorder recovery. Over her 30-year career, she has helped people unpack their body's story and all of the wisdom it has to offer. She trains other therapists and health professionals on how to best approach body image with their clients and staff. And she has written a new book with her co-writer, Whitney Otto, called Body Image Inside Out: A Revolutionary Approach to Body Image Healing. I loved this conversation. Deb is super down to earth, compassionate, and so knowledgeable about the ways we can take on and heal from body image issues. And she really unlocked some profound insights for me about what's going on underneath when a body image thought comes into my mind. This episode is basically a therapy session, so be warned. But I hope you get as much out of it as I did. All right, let's get hot. Deb Schachter, welcome to Hotter Than Ever.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so happy to have you here. This is a subject that is incredibly near and dear to my heart. And I think it is a subject that is relevant to every single woman listening to this podcast. We all have bodies. We all have perceptions about them. We live in a culture that doesn't seem to like us very much. Or at least somehow gives us the message that whatever body we came in is not right or good enough or how it's supposed to be. And maybe we just start with why do so many women struggle with body image? Why do we have this internalized negative dialogue going on?
It's a great question, and there are lots of ways to answer it. But the first one that always comes to mind for me is that there's this sort of macro experience of what we hear, day in and day out, what we take in day in and day out, and then what's happening inside us. And that's really where that interaction happens, is really where I think the money is. Because
Mm.
yes, we all take in those messages and we all take in those images all the time, but really how that interacts with what's happening inside our own hearts and bodies and systems and everything that we're moving through day in and day out is really where the action is. Because if we're being told that there's something that could be different and there's things inside of us that we wish were different,
Mm-hmm.
aside from our
Mm-hmm.
body gives us a chance to try and right that wrong. So while everybody takes that stuff in, if we're in a more vulnerable place and in a more vulnerable body, based on what might be happening for us, based on what we might be navigating in our lives, body image, the way that Whitney and I describe it, is almost a hero or a heroine. It's trying to help us and offer us some sense that if we change it, something will be different.
Mm.
We
So it's
say it's
almost like
a
a false indicator. It's like stuff's going on, but we translate it as
exactly.
my body's not right.
Exactly. That's the language. That's one of my favorite metaphors we use. It's almost like an indicator light coming on in your car,
Mm.
and it's telling you that something's awry. But so often what we take from that is what's wrong with us, when in fact, there's nothing wrong with us, but there's something awry around us. There's something that isn't feeling right around us, something inside us that isn't feeling right. And the body image steps in to help us try
Mm.
and navigate that, to give us a path to try and find our way. I mean, we literally say it's a bridge towards hope, even though, again,
Mm.
it may not feel hope. It may not feel good, but it might make us feel hopeful that something could be different.
So if you're having like a bad body image day, if you
Right.
look
We
in the
call them
mirror,
BIMs, bad body image moments. So it's
okay,
moments when our body image spikes.
right. So I look in the mirror and I go,
Yep.
my fucking stomach is so disgusting. I mean,
Yep.
that's where it lands for me always. Is like,
Yep.
why is my
Yep.
stomach always like this? How come I
Yep.
can't be normal? How come I can't be beautiful? How come I can't be acceptable?
Yep.
And so your interpretation is that conversation that comes up so hard and so strong is like maybe there's something else going on.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a flag that there's something deeper happening that's hooking in to the body image, and that then it becomes the leader of the conversation, because it's so tempting, right? Then we have a way to try and tend to whatever is beneath it. So that's what we so often talk about body image being multidimensional. It's not just a two-dimensional image of the camera or the mirror. It's all these other layers that are happening underneath, but those images sort of capture it, and then they take it and run, and then we're off to the races, and
Well,
we've
and the
lost what might be
culture,
below it.
yeah, and the
Yeah,
culture 100% capitalizes on and reinforces this
totally.
notion that like, no, if you have a bad body image, it's because you have a bad body. And so
Right.
here are all these things we can sell you to fix it.
Exactly. And yet they don't tend to any of the things that are actually fueling it. And that's really what our whole book is about, is that idea of is learning how to decode what our body image is saying, so we can actually figure out what we're feeling inside and what we actually need.
So how do we so I look in the mirror, I have a bad body
Yep.
image moment
Yep.
and I go, God, like how am I going to, you know, uh,
How am I going to find my way through this
what
one?
am I going to wear? How am I going to
Yep.
camouflage this? How am I going to pretend
Yep.
that my body's better than it is? How am I going to walk into this meeting and feel okay? How am I going to feel like I deserve to show up in the world in this body?
Yep.
I mean, I have some heavy duty shit around this stuff.
You're
And I've
not
been working on
alone.
it my whole life in 1,000
Yeah.
different ways. And I
Yeah.
can talk about what those ways have been. Some have been effective, some have not. As I get older and I get under the psychological stuff that I've always carried around, I care less about the body image stuff and I care more about how I feel emotionally. But for many, many years, especially when it came to like love and dating and relationships, my body was like a place to put my feelings of not being lovable. It was always, to me, because my body sucked. That was why I couldn't have the love, the relationship, the life that I wanted. And as I get older and spend decades in therapy, it becomes clearer to me what that shit is that's under there. But that doesn't mean the body stuff doesn't come up.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we talk about is there's no way that we're not going to, it's not, body image isn't something that you fix. It's something to be in relationship with, because our bodies are constantly changing and our lives are constantly changing. So learning how to be in relationship with your body image and learning how to dialogue with your body image is the only way that we can be on this path and find some steadiness, I believe, because otherwise, like you said, it does a really good job of hijacking you, and it's really hard to be in an argument with your body image. It's like having a megaphone in your ear, right? Just telling you
Yeah.
what you should be
Yeah.
or shouldn't be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like, do you know any woman who doesn't struggle with this stuff?
It's a great question. I mean, I'm going to say I do know a few, but as you pointed out, I think the way that I describe it is that we all have bodies, we all have feelings about them, and there's nothing pathological about that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think part of the challenge is moving away from kind of a little bit of the blame game and the externalizing about, I mean, all the systemic stuff is so true, and there's so much work to do there. And the work that we can do with our own relationship with our own body image and understanding how and why it showed up for us in our lives, at what time and when, and really bringing curiosity to that is where we're
Mm-hmm.
going to get more freedom and more space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're an expert in body image and disordered eating. I learned in Overeaters Anonymous, where I spent 7 years, and nobody goes there because they want to. So the least sexy title. It's like the program with the most
You get
opportunity to
labeled the minute.
rebrand.
Yeah.
Can we rebrand so it doesn't feel so gross to walk in that
Yeah.
door? But that program really changed my brain and my mind and my heart and my life around really understanding, like, wow, when I was a kid, I really needed sugar. Like, I
Yes.
really needed
Yes.
something to make me feel
Yes.
better. And what I found was, once I stuck my finger in the sugar bowl, which my mother will laugh about to this day, she's like, and then you used to lick your finger and stick it in the sugar bowl. And I was like, yeah, I would have fucking mainlined it. Like, I would have shot it into my veins if I had known how to do
Totally.
that as a child. That's how much pain I was in. I'm really grateful. I learned in 12 steps to be grateful that I found that, because even though it caused problems in terms of making me overweight, it at least provided some kind of relief. And that was my child's solution to needing some
Absolutely.
relief. And so thank you to the cookies and thank you to the sugar. And I don't have to do that today in quite the same way. I don't have to use food in quite the same way, but I'm also on weight loss drugs, so I don't have to eat at all. Which is a whole other thing, which I'm sure is coming up for you in your practice.
For sure. For sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, when I hear a story like the sugar story, I always say to people, I think a lot about volume,
Mm.
meaning loudness. And I think about if you need to and I've had other clients who've eaten sugar straight from the candy, cookie
Yeah,
jar or
my
whatever.
people. Yeah.
Exactly. And the way that I think about it is something else must be really loud for you to need a food that's so loud, right?
Oh, yeah,
Like,
because sugar is like hardcore food. Yeah.
exactly. It's so stimulating. So there's something that it's offsetting before you even know what it is. You're trying to match that energy, right? You're trying to, cancel out whatever
That
else is so
frequency.
loud.
That's so
Exactly.
interesting. That's such a
Yeah.
great way of thinking about it. I've met a lot of people in 12 steps who have been sexually abused as children,
Yeah.
and they were using
Totally.
food and they were extremely overweight. And you could
Yeah.
see that the volume of the abuse was to use your model,
Yes,
the
absolutely.
volume, the frequency of
Absolutely.
it was so high that they needed a lot of food to cancel that out.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and then
exactly
their
right.
coming to solve the food problem when what they need
Right.
is to get underneath the food problem to solve the trauma.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And that's what's so, I think, important about understanding the function of the body image negativity, because I think people then feel so much shame in
Mm,
their bodies, shame in the
totally.
ways they've responded to your point to try and tend to them. And now they feel shame because their body isn't the right shape. And then we live in a culture that tells us none of us are in the right shape.
Right.
So learning more about learning how to track our own internal sort of messaging, belief system, and the volume inside of us around what's happening in our body image. And when we have these spikes, really bringing curiosity and the curiosity and compassion, and really starting to understand what creates these spikes, whether it's people, whether it's settings. I mean, you described getting ready, putting clothes on. The book, we have so many anecdotes about people getting ready for, the college reunion when they've gotten sober and all their friends are going to be drinking, or meeting the in-laws when you're not the right religion. I mean, any different kind of circumstance where we feel vulnerable is going to be can be expressed through how we feel about our bodies, because again, that gives us a tool that we think, whether it's the outfit or the flat belly or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that we're going to, if we nail it, then we're going to nail it. So it's such a powerful thing to start to see how our body image is actually trying to help us feel more capable in whatever's happening that we're facing that is creating fear or suffering or overwhelm.
Mm. I love that you talk about clothes in your book. I love that you talk about, the mother being disapproving in the dressing room and telling
Yeah,
the daughter to get a
a
smaller
different
size
size. Yeah.
cheerleading costume when she had worked her whole middle school and high school to get to the finals of the cheerleading squad. And her mother goes, get a smaller size. You might fit.
Yeah.
It might motivate you to fit into it. Like, oh my God, this is what we're up against,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
But yeah. And the language that I use a lot is this idea of currency. If that's the
Mm,
currency in your family, like in that family, the mom story, the mom's mom story, there's all this currency around size.
oh, yeah.
And, and again, it's attached to all these other things. So when the mom says that, she's not actually saying you should be skinnier, even though she is, but she's saying if you do this, you will be more well liked, more successful, get yourself a man, whatever it
Right.
is, that belief. So really learning more about the currency in our families and how it's been equated with whatever being in a particular kind of body means in our family system.
I will tell you a story. My family, beauty, body, attractiveness on my father's side and
Mm,
my mother's side, hugely important. These are beautiful people and they have gotten a lot in their lives from being attractive. My aunt, who passed away last year, was sort of the matriarch. She passed away at 93.
mm,
Um, she was very attractive, and her beauty and her vitality was her currency. And as a woman
mm.
who grew up in the 30s, 40s, to found a mate at age 19, like, because she was the prettiest and whatever. I was visiting her last year with my children. She was 91, 92. She pulled me aside. I mean, I'm 50 years old. I'm 53 now. I was about 50. I'm just saying I'm fucking older than a person that you should do this to. I see doing this to a young person, but she pulled me aside and she said, Erin, I would like to get you some help. And I
Oh my
said,
God.
okay. And she said, I would like to pay for you to get surgery on your stomach.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
my
Uh,
God.
and to her mind, because of her upbringing and her values and the currency that attractiveness had in her life, she was being both cruel and kind to me.
She thought she was
And
helping.
she did. But because I've been in therapy my whole life and because I am in an empowered place and because I am who I am, I I went home and cried. My children were like, "Why are you crying?" And I was like, I told them. And they were
It's a
like, what
really
the fuck? We're
appropriate
never speaking
reaction.
to her again. And I was like, okay, she
Mm,
has problems. Obviously, if a person says this to you, they have problems. But also, I'm
yeah.
feeling really bad. I called her on the phone and I said, what you said to me was not okay. Like, it was shaming, it was insulting and degrading. And you can't talk to me like that. And she was like, I'm so sorry. It's really, I'm so sorry. That was mean. And it's because I don't like myself very much.
Wow.
I was like,
Wow.
what? What? Like, here's this person who we all idolize, who we all think is like so incredible. She's a huge inspiration to my whole family.
Mm,
And so this is how insidious this stuff is. And the fact that she told me the
absolutely.
truth in that moment, she never would have if I hadn't confronted her. I
Well, that's
had
what
to.
I was thinking. How cool that that's what came from it.
I
That's
know.
amazing.
I know. But I also didn't really want to talk to her very much for like 6 months after that.
Yeah.
She was like, I hope you
Yeah.
can forgive me. Please forgive me. I hope you can forgive me. And I was like, I can. She's like, I hope we can still have fun together. And I was like,
Mm,
okay, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to be the
yeah.
grown up here for my kids, for my mom who was on the trip. But like, it
Mm.
sucked. It
So imagine,
sucked.
right? Imagine if that happens when we're young, right?
Oh, it did.
Imagine,
Yeah. I mean, that's the
right?
story of my life. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you had the courage at 50, whatever, to say that is yours, not mine, when we're little and that becomes the recipe for connection and for love, and that's what we learn is the currency,
Mm-hmm.
that is really hard to let go of. And
Mm-hmm.
so then when other things in our life happens, then it's kind of like, oh, well, here's the recipe. I got it.
Right. Right. If I was thinner,
Exactly. If I
if I
was fill
worked
in the
out
blank,
more.
whatever that is. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we do, one of the things we talk a lot about is inside curiosity and outside curiosity. So
Mm-hmm.
we think about outside curiosity is what is happening around us that might be kicking this stuff up. So,
Mm.
whatever it is, the reunion, the date, anything that's happening in our lives that's activating us on the inside. So
Right.
getting
The
really
holiday
curious.
dinner, the whatever,
Totally.
going back to the scene of the crime. Right.
Exactly. Either what is about to happen or what has happened, and how is it turning the volume up on our body image? Why is our body image stepping in to try and be helpful? And then inside curiosity, which is getting really curious. If my blank were blank, then I would feel less of something or more of something. So if my stomach were flatter, then I'd be, much more comfortable at this dinner, and I would feel less fear or less doubt or whatever it is. So
Mm-hmm.
sort of going with the body image belief and really getting at it, what it is trying to help manage, and learning what we covet comes with a feeling and starting to decode that. So if we're longing for the bouncy butt or the toned arms, what
Mm-hmm.
life comes with that? What experience comes with that? What partner comes with that? What sex life comes with that? Whatever it is that we think when we're in that body we're going to get, and starting to really help people untangle that.
What if it's true?
Great. Then the question is, what is actually going to get me those things? Because there may be some truth to that, but it's unlikely that it's just the toned arms or the
Right.
right butt. It's the way we move through the world. It's the way we take care of ourselves. It's the way we listen to our intuition.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I do a lot, which I love, is when people, and we do this in chapter 7, which is what we call a pedestal person. It's the person that we idealize, and really, rather than saying we shouldn't be jealous, saying who are we jealous of and why?
Mm.
So really decoding, what is it? Like, I have a client I'm thinking of who always talked about wanting Michelle Obama arms.
Oh, she had great arms.
Okay. Yeah. So of course we can say she's fabulous arms, but what that was actually related to was growing up in a family with 2 very bright and driven parents, but a dad who was really abusive to her mom. and she had a professor who was in, a body that had a Michelle Obama body and Michelle Obama arms. So for her, it had much more to do with like having strength and power in your relationship and having balance in your life and not trying to do all the housework and be a professor. So when you start to untangle this stuff, yes, it does have to do with that superficial layer, but it's really about the life that comes with it. And people, I think, are really relieved to start to be able to be more creative that way, rather than just think it's just the arms.
Right, because it's never just the anything, right?
Exactly.
The
Exactly. Exactly.
it's all
But we're taught that.
symbols. It's symbols. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's why I like that idea of decoding, because it's really taking your language, or whoever we're jealous of, whether it's someone at the gym or someone on the train. There's usually some really good information in there if we can bring that pure curiosity and really start to think about, what do we imagine their life is like? What's going to happen when they get off the train? What's their partner cooking for dinner? What are their kids like? What kind of dog do they have, or whatever it is? And it starts to be more fun, which is one of the things that we tried so hard in this book to really replicate from our workshops, is people laugh. We just, it's so much more creative than this kind of like pick your favorite body part and love it, or dance like a leaf and feel free. It's like, let's talk about your real life and who do you envy and why. Let's talk about it. And people are like, whoa, I have permission to kind of break that down. That's cool.
Totally. And then the statistics are out there that like if you are thinner, you do better in the workplace. If you are X, then you get Y. Like this culture is so superficial.
So superficial. And one of the other big themes in the book that we talk so much about is this idea of alignment and resonance, because we're told what we're supposed to look like. And then we're told that's what is going to give us the X, the Y, the Z. So the more we can help people really start to listen for their inner resonance, and that could be about movement, that could be about food, that could be about clothes, that could be about not related to the body, music, whatever. But the more we start to listen to our own inner alignment and our own resonance, then we are going to be more aligned, and then we are going to feel better in our own bodies.
Right. And then we are going to get the things that we want.
Exactly.
Because it's coming from the inside out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No one, exactly. Hence the title of the book. Exactly. That really no one has that information but you.
There's no way around the inner work. There's no way around it. We all want to skip it. It hurts. It's uncomfortable. It sucks. It makes you go back to the things that made you feel terrible when you were young, to the behaviors that were enacted on you that you had you were so powerless over. We all have that stuff. And it feels gross to go back into it.
It does feel gross. But what I will say, the 3 muscles that we talk about in the book, so that it doesn't have to just feel like, oh my God, I just have to like retell all of these stories, is thinking about, so the 3 muscles that we talk about to do this work are mindful awareness, curiosity, and compassion. So mindful awareness is just building a practice that's going from I look like a piece of shit to wow, I'm saying terrible things about how I look to myself today.
Oh, that's interesting. Say that again.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So it's bringing an observing eye to the experience of negative body image. So rather than saying my ass is so flat or my thighs are so flabby, it's saying, wow, I am saying really negative things about my thighs today. I am really focused on my thighs today. I keep trying on different clothes because my thighs feel really bad today. It's learning. We call it being a weatherman or weather woman. It's a forecaster. You're just learning how to observe what's happening. So those are really different. And most people, they don't even know that's an option to say, wow, I'm saying horrible things to myself today. Or even my body image is terrible today, is very different than I look like a piece of shit. Those are very different. So that's mindful awareness. That's the first one, is just noticing what you're doing and starting to build some space. And then after that, we can start to then bring in some of that curiosity, like, whoa, of course I have 20 pairs of jeans on the floor. I'm going to meet my, potential new in-laws and I'm terrified.
Right.
So bringing in the inside curiosity, the outside curiosity, and then the third one is the compassion. Because then if we're like, oh my God, of course I'm hating on myself. I'm so scared about tonight. I'm so worried that I'm going to be seen in X, Y, and Z way, or misunderstood, or not approved of. And my body is trying to save me. Oh my gosh. It doesn't mean all of a sudden the body hate is just going to go silent, but to understand why it's so loud, there's so much more of an opportunity to come back to yourself and have some more compassion and say, oh, that makes so much sense. Of course it's really loud today. I'm scared.
Yeah, poor sweetie, right? Like
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
Someone told me their self-talk. They talk to themselves the way they talk to their dog.
Oh, I love
I talk
that.
to my dog the most idiotic, like cutie pie, adoring language.
Totally. Who's the
And
best? Who's the best? Who's the best? You're the best.
yeah, you could not be more beautiful. I love you so much. Oh my
Yeah.
God. How can you be more perfect? You're not. It's not possible. It's just not
Exactly.
possible.
Exactly,
I
right?
just
And
love that. I took that as
yeah,
like an inspiration where like, my self-talk and again, like for years and years and years and years and years and years of work on myself, like it's not that bad these days.
no, it's
It's not
amazing. And
that
we talk
bad.
about that. It's a practice. It's just like
Mhm.
yoga or meditation. We've been so well trained to
Mm.
hate ourselves and to think there's something wrong with our bodies. So the practice of doing what you're describing, of starting to get some space in there, starting to understand the reason that these beliefs are there, and starting to really bring that daily curiosity to these ebbs and flows really gives us the opportunity to start to build a different practice.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still having, I'm 53. We always think, oh, well, I'm old enough to know better or whatever. It starts when it starts. You heal when you heal. You have the revelations when you have the revelations. You cannot time it. This week alone, I was like, oh, instead of thinking about exercise as like discipline, which is a thing that was taught to me as a kid, I was told I didn't have
Mm,
discipline. I was like, no, it's just evidence that you hate me, that I have to do all this exercise. You're telling me there's something wrong with me, and that's why I have to do this. So, exercise has always been a thing where I'm like rebelling, but it's not helpful to me. And this past
totally.
couple of years, since I've been in this hotter than ever transformation, I've fallen in love with Pilates and fallen in love with my own strength. And I realized that exercise, I have a lot of like life force energy. And
Mhm.
I realized that I manage it with sex. Definitely. I need to have a lot of sex so that I can like get through that.
Yeah.
And then I can manage it with exercise too, that's a way to like productively use my life force energy in a way that feeds me, that like fuels my body feeling strong and good. Like it's a new thesis. It's a brand new thesis, but I'm taking it on as a thing that I could, so it's not only sex because sex requires, you do it by yourself. It's more fun with other people. And then that's complicated as shit. So like, I would like to be
It's good
able,
to have it's good to have a lot in the toolbox for
yeah, I would
sure.
like to have this other tool in the toolbox.
Absolutely.
And
And part of
yeah,
go ahead.
no, no.
I was just going to say one of the things we talk about in the book, which I really, really believe, is this idea that, body image and focusing on changing our bodies can be a way we do try and manage our nervous system and our life
Mm-hmm.
force. So learning about your own alignment, like you said, it might
Yeah,
be that so therefore we think we should, and it's not that any of these things are good or bad, but more figuring out what feels aligned to you,
right.
what feels good to your body, and then figuring out what are the things that you need in these different kinds of moments of dysregulation. You may need different things. You may need, sometimes it may be the sex and the touch, and other times it might be a Pilates sesh, just really learning what your body needs and when. And again, rather than getting on that train of let me just think about what could be different about my body, that
Right.
is a way to kind of direct that energy, and it can keep you busy, as you know so well. So
Yeah.
this is about, again, going inside and really trying to figure out, what do I actually need that my
Yeah.
body image is trying to help me with.
Yeah. Totally. Talk to me about storytelling because I feel like we tell ourselves so many stories about our bodies and what our bodies
Mm,
mean and what it means when we're, a certain weight. And like,
yep.
I feel like That's so many of us could just stand to be better writers of our own stories, you know?
I love that. It's a great way to put it. Yeah, I mean, obviously as a therapist, I hear stories all the time, and I love hearing people's stories, and I love hearing them over time and how they evolve as people get more insight.
Oh, I
And
sometimes feel like my therapist should pay me because my story's so interesting.
she's very lucky. I will say that. She's very
Well,
lucky.
I think I'm interesting. I don't know. Maybe,
Yeah.
hopefully,
No, I'm
podcast listeners think so too.
exactly. I mean, I think it's a great question. I mean, part of it is figuring out, is it our story? Whose
Mm,
story are we telling? Like when you described the discipline, that's not your story, right?
no, it's not.
Exactly. But it may be a story that we carry
Mhm.
and that we have kind of laid down. I almost describe it sometimes like fossils that have gotten kind of laid into the ground, right? And so learning that those stories may actually be kind of burdens that we're carrying from other people, other generations, other
Yeah.
feedback, other
Other
mirrors,
trauma
other trauma. Exactly.
that's not
So
ours.
that's
Yeah.
not ours. Exactly. And that often leads to the family currency, right?
Mhm.
So I see that very often, especially when families have had histories of trauma, that being in a body, the right body, will somehow resolve some of these other traumas that these
Protect you from it.
ancestors.
Right.
Exactly. So I think I think it's really important to get that story down and understand more about it. And again, I love the decoding. I love really looking at the words and really thinking about what, if you've said, I always have focused on my blah blah blah, my jiggly arms or my too big whatever. I really get people to actually look at the words and have us actually start to look at, either are these words that you might apply somewhere else in your life? Are there other aspects of your life? So
Mm.
if things are jiggly, if you're always talking about being jiggly, maybe things are feeling kind of jiggly in your life. Maybe things are feeling a little unstable, or maybe they're feeling stuck. And so really
Mm.
getting people to write down their language and then really start to explore what their language may actually be saying about the greater context of their life that they haven't been thinking about. And people are often really blown away because they're so relieved to think, why am I, still thinking about the fact that I look like a potato in this dress? Well, let's think about what do potatoes look like and feel like, and where else in your life are you feeling like a potato?
Mhm. No, I mean, this brings tears to my eyes.
Hmm. How
Just think of,
so?
oh, well, because I have this story about my stomach that it's
Hmm.
just too big. It's too much. It shouldn't be like that. There's something wrong with it.
Hmm.
And, that it keeps me from being acceptable, whatever, right? And
Hmm.
extrapolate that to always feeling like in relationship, my needs are too much, my desires are too much,
Yeah.
I'm too much. And I say this to, like, when I'm in a relationship with someone, I say, like, my biggest fear is that I'm too much, that it's,
Totally.
that I have too many needs. And it's because I was trained not to have needs. I was
Totally.
trained to, like,
Totally.
shut up and deal,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know?
I was actually wondering when you were started talking just now about what you said before about your life force. I mean, when we're
Mhm.
born with a lot of life force and we're in a family where that may not work for the other people in the family,
Yeah.
and or they may not know how to help you kind of manage your own life force,
Well,
it
or it's
can.
inconvenient.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And, so the seminal chapter of our book was one that we didn't even know existed when we wrote it. And that's chapter 5, which is body image and relationships. And
Yes.
in that chapter, we literally had this aha that we were like, oh my God, what about body image isn't about relationships? And this
Right.
whole idea that our early caregivers are our early relational mirrors, far before we know what body image is, we're taking in what they're telling us and telling us both about ourselves and also who we need to be in a relationship with them successfully. So
Right.
we talk about this idea, sort of what you're describing, of like, if I'm not the right size for someone else, if my needs are too big for someone else, how can I shapeshift
Yeah.
to be more connected, accepted, welcome, and loved? And really examining how we may have, based on, again, their traumas, their own stories that they may not be aware of who they needed us to be, and how that can become an embodied experience,
Mhm.
and that then we use our bodies to try and manage those relationships.
100%.
And as
So
adults,
present for me. Yeah.
totally, as adults, how do we discover where we may have cut and pasted some of that early patterning and early adapting? So for you, always worrying about being too much, you cut and paste from then to now. And one of the things that I love is one of my favorite exercises of art. It's called a bad body image debrief. And it's after you've left an interaction with someone and you all of a sudden feel like you gained 10 pounds or your pants are tighter, or why did you wear what you were wearing? There's usually something that happened in the interaction that left you feeling misaligned. So the challenge is not to think what's wrong with me, but what was wrong with that interaction? Where did I feel unseen or misunderstood? And how do I really decouple what I felt about what I felt in the interaction with how I feel in my pants?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much unpacking to do.
Exactly.
In Overeaters Anonymous, they say fat is not a feeling. Like, I feel fat today it's actually not what you're feeling. You're actually feeling something else. And it's
And often
manifesting as fat. I feel fat.
Exactly. No, totally. And we actually have a section, I think it's in the first chapter, called Is Fat a Feeling? Because we get that question all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not a feeling, but it might be the quality we feel of a feeling. So fat with feelings, full of feelings. We have an anecdote. I think it's one of the first anecdotes is one of my clients who used to get really overstimulated when she would be in New York City with her family and no one cared because they thought it was so cool to be in New York City. And so the little anecdote, the title is Times Square Makes Me Feel Fat. Because she was so upregulated, but no one cared because they all felt like this is the Mecca. Right. We're in New York City in the middle of Times Square. How can you not want to be here? And so in her body, she was fat with overstimulation. She was full of feelings.
It's so incredible. It's so incredible what a metaphor it is, how symbolic these thoughts are, how the brain works to sort of that shape-shifting idea. Like, if my shape was different, if I was different, then I would get my needs met. Here's how I'm going to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it really honors, when we talk about the shape shifting, we actually talk about puzzle pieces and how our unique puzzle piece shape may have changed to take care of either someone else in the family system, one person, or the family as a whole. So we actually take our authentic shape and we change it. So, we get really creative, we get funny, we get good grades, we keep our voice down, we do whatever so that we can fit in the family puzzle. It's so compelling. So I think, again, people feel so relieved that there is something so non-pathological about how their body image was trying to help them. And it may not need to be doing that anymore, but it doesn't know that.
It's such a tender approach. I love that so much. I mean, I worked in the comedy world for a long time, and there's this incredible
that
British
does
comic.
not surprise me.
Yeah, there's this incredible British comic named Jimmy Carr, and he says, when he meets a new comedian friend, I think I'm quoting him correctly, he says, "Which one of your parents was depressed?"
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Who was unhappy in your household?
Totally.
Who did you learn to tell jokes for?
I think Ellen DeGeneres talks about that. I think her mom had really bad depression.
I mean, they all have some parental trauma, some something that the comedy is compensating for.
Totally. And to think of it as survival, right? Like, as mammals, if we take care of them, we are safe. So it's hardwired in us. We don't think about it. We just do it.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it's very complicated because I wanted to adapt to fit into the societal, the familial standards, but I didn't want the attention that would come from having the ideal body that I was told to have. And so my relationship with my body image stuff has been one of feeling like being fat was a rebellion. But really what I understand now is that I wanted to be free from sexual attention. And so that being fat, being unacceptable was keeping me outside of the category of someone who would get sexual attention.
Yeah.
And so that's so interesting to me too. I was like, oh, good job, Erin. Like, good
Totally.
job. Like
Brilliant
you
strategy.
figured out a strategy somehow in your child brain, that you didn't feel safe around certain things. And so, this is how you were going to do it.
Totally. And if you think about it, when we're young, our body is really the only thing that we have access to that's accessible to us that we can use as a tool. It's right here. It's right now. And the sensations of whatever it might have been that made you feel unsafe are in your body. So of
Yes.
course the body's going to be the place this starts. It's brilliant. It makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And then like the older I get, the safer I feel, the more I can take care of myself, the more I'm like, oh, well, maybe I would like to have a body like that.
Totally.
Maybe that would be nice for me, is
Totally.
to feel slim and fit and attractive and
figuring
and all
out
these
exactly
things.
what feels right to you in your body, back to, whether it's the movement or the food or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and really taking care of those younger parts of you that
Yeah.
was the greatest weapon you had.
The only weapon.
The only weapon.
We're so powerless as children.
Yeah.
We're so vulnerable as children. So let's talk about children and
Sure.
those of us who are mothers.
Yeah.
Listen to this podcast. How do we have kids who have good body image? Because I have twins. I have a boy and a girl. And my son really suffers with body image stuff. My daughter a little bit because she's a middle school girl, but even she will say like, my body image is pretty good. I'm like bigger than other girls, but I don't care. I'm good with it. I'm good with myself. Like,
oh, that's awesome.
Oh my God, where did you come from? But my son is really struggles because he lost his athleticism during COVID. And then we also got divorced and he's so tender and sensitive and ADHD and he's got stuff. And he has days where he's just hating himself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a great question. I mean, the first thing I always say is to do your own work. So you are doing that in spades. So it's very clear to me that while he's in his own process, to be in a family situation where he can talk about that with you,
for sure.
Holy moly. If you think about, we go back to the cheerleading lady and the size too small dress. I mean, that's so different. So in and of itself, just creating a space where they can, rather than having to be alone with it, be able to share it is immense. And then from there,
I'm doing some parenting.
Yes.
Right.
Oh my God. Yes. Good. I mean, imagine growing up and being able to say to your parent, I feel really bad about my body, and having them be like, tell me more. I really want to hear about it. I want to hear about what that's like for you. Totally.
Also, I can say to him, I get it.
Totally.
I've been there.
Yeah, totally. So, in some ways, it's the same tools that we talk about for our readers and our workshoppers is, again, bringing in the mindful awareness. Wow, it sounds like you're really saying things to yourself that are really unkind. I really hear how critical you're being of blah, blah, blah. So even just mirroring it back without the language and really reflecting what you're hearing and having them start to hear that, I think is a really good model. And then again, bringing in that curiosity, introducing them to this idea that there are things that spike that. And it doesn't mean that it's, you just have these little spikes and the rest of your life is steady, but more like there are phases in our lives where body image may be louder. I wonder why. I wonder why. The more you can bring that curiosity, and I often say to people, it's so tempting to want to talk them out of it, and that doesn't give them the chance to really feel seen. Yeah. So even naming that dilemma, God, there's a part of me that wants to say to you, you're so beautiful inside and out. I love you so much, but I also really want to hear what you're saying. I want you to feel heard and understood. So tell me more. What are you thinking about? What goes on in your head when you're in this place?
And also, maybe I could say to him, you may pay attention to when this comes up for you.
Absolutely.
There may be some emotional thing going on that then you translate.
Absolutely.
And you're not wrong to translate it.
No.
It's just what you're doing.
Totally. And just to say, let's bring some curiosity that I have found, or I heard this lady on my podcast.
Yeah.
Tell me that there's
my whole parenting is I heard this lady on my podcast.
You're not alone. You're not alone at all. thank God, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
great way we get to share information and learn about all these cool ways that we're all learning about in our own lives. So really giving them the opportunity to start to see that being modeled. Oh,
Hmm.
I wonder what else is going on this week. Is there anything else so that they start to build that own connection? Like, oh, there are things that spike it up. There are things or people or environments
Mm.
that make it louder,
Hmm.
and starting to maybe build those connections, and then ultimately saying to them like, wow, so whatever that is, I mean, it could be, wow, is dance the thing for you? It sounds like you get this feedback a lot from your teacher there, or other things that we can do to help you feel less of that. What really getting them curious about what
Hmm.
they're actually holding, again, what they're actually feeling, that maybe the body image is trying to help with. So
Mm.
I think curiosity is totally the name of the game.
Yeah. I love that. And that's really practical.
Yeah, we
Um,
actually have on our website a little, I can't remember exactly what we call it, but something like 8 or 9 bullet points for parents. And we're about to post it because the book just came out last week, but I can send it to you. I'm happy to send it to you. And if you want to put it on your notes or whatever,
yeah.
I'm happy to
Amazing.
do that. Yeah.
We can put that in the show notes. We'll put your how to get your book in the show
Great.
notes. We'll put
Great.
your
Great.
website and how to engage more in this conversation with you because it's so big, it's so meaningful. I actually think it's one of the defining conversations for women.
Yeah.
I think for men
Yeah.
too, but for
Yeah.
women especially.
I think right now, especially because I just had a client say this, I thought it was so great. We're really the first generation of women that are really, holding as much as we are in so
Mhm.
many dimensions in our
Mhm.
lives. And so I think therefore there is more, there's more overwhelm, there's more too much. And
Mhm.
again, you hear this all the time from C-suite executives and all these different people who have really full lives. It's too much, and my body is a way to try and manage that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's either, managing it with diet and exercise or getting sick. And
Yeah.
that is what we
Right.
see
Right.
when we're
Right.
trying to have it all and it's too much and we're
And things are out of
managing
balance. Yeah.
everything is out of balance and all the labor is on us. Like
Yeah.
this is what is
Yeah.
happening to this
Yeah.
generation, this unprecedentedly successful,
Yeah.
incredible generation of women that we are.
Yeah. Totally
Um,
incredible. So the more we can give them those tools to really learn how to unpack the
yeah.
ways that self-hate is in its own way trying to balance things out,
Mm,
it's really something we hope will help, empower people.
yeah. What do you want our listeners to take away from this conversation that will help them deal with their own body image issues in this next phase of
Mm,
their lives, especially as they age,
such a
especially
great
over
question.
40? And
Yep.
we're going to live for a really long time. We're going to have this
Yep.
conversation in our heads in different ways,
Yep.
and it's
Like
going
your
to
poor
evolve.
auntie. Oh my
I
God.
know,
I'm
in
not going to
her
forget her.
90s.
Oy. And
In
I had a
her
grandmother like
90s.
that. Oh, I look so terrible today. I wish I looked better for you. I'm like,
Oh my
Grandma, you're my
God.
grandma. That's all that
Meanwhile,
matters.
like, if you saw this woman, you would be like, this is the most beautiful woman in her 90s I've ever seen in my life. Like,
Amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So I would say, I mean, if there's any word I always lead with, it's the curiosity. Body image is an individual sport, and it's healed in connection. So
Mm,
whether you can connect with yourself or other people that are having these conversations and really learning about how to be in a different dialogue with our bodies, or reading our book, any way that we can get some space in there and learn how to really understand what's happening in our body image. So I would say curiosity, if I were to make a t-shirt, that's what it would say,
mm,
is really getting curious. Why now? What's happening? What am I afraid of? I often say to my clients when they come in, they're like, oh my God, why am I blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, all right, lose the attitude. Can you ask that same question without the tude? And then we can figure out what's going on. So
mhm,
lose the tude and
mhm.
get curious.
Yeah. I love that, Deb. I'm so grateful for the work that you do. It's so
Oh,
important. I
you.
love the insights you've shared. I feel like I got a free therapy session, so thanks so much for
Oh,
that.
it was so cool to
Um,
meet you too. I feel really lucky.
yeah, this is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Hotter Than Ever. I hope you enjoyed this conversation about body image and all the stories and underlying messages it's trying to communicate to us. Do you have anyone in your life who needs to hear Deb Schachter's message? Your best friend or your sister, colleague, your daughter, your son. So many of us struggle in this area. Please share this conversation with someone you love whose life might be changed for the better by these insights. We do not have to suffer. And if we are suffering, we do not have to suffer alone. Hotter Than Ever is produced by Erica Gerard and Podkit Productions. Our associate producer is Melody Carey. Music is by Chris Keating, with vocals by Isa Fernandez. By the way, have I told you how gorgeous you are? I think it every time I see you, but I don't always say it. You are looking hotter than ever. See what I did there? Yeah, it's embarrassing. I folded that right in. Okay, never mind. But you really do look fantastic.